Thank you for gathering together. It's been a delight to fellowship with you all, to meet new people already. How many of you are first-timers here? Wow. Well, welcome. What a delight to have you here. The most important thing we're going to do tonight is pray. Would you join me? Father God, this is the day you have made, and tonight we do gather and rejoice and find our gladness in it. Thank you for what so clearly are the many blessings you have showered on this ministry. We're thankful tonight for the clear evidence of your work in the hearts of men and women who have a desire to find a path in some way out of homelessness and addiction. We're thankful for the blessings of an incredible staff and so many committed volunteers that you use to minister in their lives. And we give you thanks tonight for the many people that provide financial support and prayer support and community support in many ways, who quietly undergird what is your work here. So tonight, as we gather together to celebrate your work, help us, Lord, to find encouragement, joy, and hope in what you are doing here to change lives, because your hand is both necessary and evident in all things. So we give you thanks. Amen. You know, it's I get to introduce Phil Altmeyer, and as I was driving here tonight, I realized that Phil has been the executive director of the mission almost half of the time it has existed in Spokane. And so that doesn't sound very long until I tell you that we showed up in Spokane over 30 years ago, walked into a church, and Phil and Carol said, "Why don't y'all come over for lunch after church?" And Carol didn't have anything ready. She just said, come to my home and enjoy. And so, Carol, we remember that fondly because it's an evidence of your heart for hospitality. And you two together have modeled that in your home, in your church, and through how you have served together here. So thank you. You know, the card that we got is outlined tonight. The roadmap is safety, a plan, and time. And I thought, as I introduce Phil, not only as the person that Carol makes look good, but what I had written in my notes to introduce Phil was that he has a love for God, and that's foundational in what makes Phil a safe person, as he is dependent on God in what he does. We're going to talk about a plan tonight. I had written on my notes, I have just been inspired and impressed by Phil's vision for this organization. And under his leadership, it has been transformed. And many of you have had a part in the expansion of this ministry that God has done through Phil. And then his longevity here is evidence of time and the commitment that it makes to make a difference. So Phil, I want to ask you to come up, say thank you for your love for God, your vision for this business, and the time you've invested well.
Thanks, Ed. Hey, I'll tell you what, Ed ate all of that soup. We've never looked back. I just want to express my appreciation to Ed and the board. You know, I don't know how many of you know this, but we shoot for, and throughout the years I've been here, to have anywhere from 25 to 30 board members. And I know a lot of nonprofits today that are serving the homeless, or even other nonprofits, they get started with 2 or 3 board members. It's a cousin, an uncle, or a brother or sister. But I appreciate the fact that I'm under godly leadership. And I appreciate the fact for 37 years, think about this, as a board, we have been united to our calling and our purpose, and the unity has been a sweet thing. So I just appreciate my board so much, and many of them are here tonight, and you know them because they have the real original white name tags, okay? And they greeted you when you came in. I want to express my appreciation. Poe is not here, but when you see their trucks, Poe Asphalt, they've been partners with us for over 20 years. They have sponsored this event for 15 years. And we have so many businesses that are committed to what we do, and we wouldn't do it without them. And I want to express my appreciation. Wasn't the food great? We have an awesome culinary department, and they love serving, and the gals from Anna Ogden Hall and Coeur d'Alene, thank you for serving tonight, and some of our residents that we have the joy of knowing. And then, Ed, you asked one of the questions I was going to ask, but I was encouraged by the number of new people we have here tonight, never been to this event. And thank you to those of you that invited and brought someone with you. Now, I have the privilege in the afternoon, I said, who traveled the furthest? And since I already had an inside loop, I knew, did you know we had someone here from Alabama? So I don't know if anyone beats that tonight or who traveled the furthest, but that's pretty amazing. They started supporting our ministry in 1998, left Spokane, and they have continued to stay involved. And we have several people that do that, by the way. I'm shocked and surprised, but they believe in what we're doing. And so I don't know who's traveled the furthest tonight, but I'm sure it's not from Alabama. But, I'm asked to share from time to time and speak on what? Is anyone out there, are you still, you know what, I was worried tonight. I was really worried. I told the staff we should be serving the cookies after the event, not before. Because I had one this afternoon, and I'm telling you, that lemon one about put me out. And lemon's my favorite. But I'm asked to speak a lot on homelessness. And it's the number one question I'm asked. I was born and raised in this beautiful city of Spokane. I love our city. I have a passion for it. And I have to be honest with you, my heart is broken over the condition of our city and what I see today. And the number one question that people ask is, what in the world has happened? And it's, if I even say to you today, those of you now, Coeur d'Alene's not like this, but if I say to you, homelessness, what people think today is entirely different than what they would have said 10 years ago, 5 years ago, for that matter. Because today, all these images of drugs, crime, streets filled with trash, human feces, tent cities that change an entire neighborhood, crime, businesses shutting down, battle over, we need more shelters for the homeless, but who wants a homeless shelter in their neighborhood? No one wants it. Politicians at war pointing their fingers at each other saying, it's your problem, you're not doing what you need to do. Friends, I want to just start by saying this. Thanks for being here tonight, because you care about the homeless or you wouldn't be here. And many of you have invested in our ministry because you want to see change and you want to see those individuals receive the help that they need. This afternoon I said this evening, tonight I said this afternoon. That's time to, well, we won't go there. You're going to hear about what we're doing to help people that are set out on those destructive paths of destruction. The last 2 years we've gathered together and we've spent a lot of time talking about why people end up homeless, the trauma in their life, why they choose drugs to deal with the pain. We've spent a lot of time talking about that. Tonight you're going to hear what we're doing to help people through that journey. The problem of homelessness, I would be naive to not say it's very complex. It's not easy to solve. But I can assure you of what we're doing as a society and a government today is not working. It's a broken system that we are led to believe this, that the more money we spend will solve the problem. We fail to understand that the root of the problem in most cases, the two number reasons, addiction and mental illness. And a lot of times the mental illness is flowing out of addiction. And we fail to understand, how do you deal with addiction? And one thing you don't do is enable and support addiction. It's the worst thing you can do, yet we find ourselves doing that. And people continue to make poor choices. Zig Ziglar had a quote that I thought was interesting. Your life is a result of the choices you make, or you made, excuse me. If you don't like your life, start making better choices. As Covey said it in another way, we do not have to be a product of our circumstances. Our life can be made from the decisions we make. One of the things that's helped me the most in what we do day in and day out is this simple truth. There's only one person in this room that I can change. As much as I may want to change the world or other people and the bad choices they're making, there's only one person that I can change, and he's standing up here in front of you. And so as we reach out to help those that need help, unless we address the issues of the heart, we can end up simply just housing and not changing behaviors or individuals. So let me ask you, how did we get here as a society and a culture and where we're at today? A decade ago, it was a group of politicians got together, and they said, and by the way, we've been doing this. I've been at this 36, 37 years almost, and the government always says, come out with your 10-year plan to end homelessness. I've been through 3 10-year plans. But this is interesting. A decade ago, they said, we're going to end homelessness by 2023. So where are we at? We're not there yet. It's not 23 yet. Oh, it is. Oh, it is. What has happened? Okay, I remember being asked to speak at different missions across the country, and I used to talk about the government, HUD programs, and I would go and say, how many of you know how much we're spending to stop homelessness? It used to be that it was in the millions. Do you know what our budget was last year to end homelessness? I've been asking people this question. As I ask you right now, what do you think the government budgeted last year to end homelessness? Got a figure in your mind? $2 billion? Let me tell you what it is. Last year it was $7.9 billion. Billion, not million, billion. Just comprehend what a billion is. President Biden wants to increase it to 8.7 next year, almost another billion more. These amounts do not include $4 billion on top of that was directly dedicated to homeless assistance. And are you ready for this? 64.9 billion, was indirectly put aside for homeless assistance through the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan and COVID-19 relief. Do the math. It's almost $80 billion. Yet, at the same time, we increased housing vouchers by 40%. That's huge. And yet, unsheltered people in America went up 20%. Friends, we cannot buy ourselves out of this problem. We were told in Spokane that when we started a housing first unit with 50 apartments in it, we would end chronic homeless. Today we have 6 of those buildings with 50 to 55 apartments, and we have more chronic homeless than we've ever had. The system is broken. We have to believe that if we reward the worst of behaviors, for some reason, people are going to change. Let me give you an example. Most of you got here tonight by driving what? Car. I've often said, what would it look like if I asked this question to you as the audience tonight? Who in the room thinks they have the most tickets? Yeah, and I won't, Annie, I know you well, so how many you have? No. So, most tickets, and my guess, speeding, but she's got most. Okay, who has been in the most wrecks? You know, you don't have to show your hands, that's okay. Now, the next one, too, for sure, don't show your hands. Who has the most DUIs? Wow. Well, you know how it works? This is how our system works with the homeless. Whoever has the most tickets, the most DUIs, and the most traffic violations, guess what? You go to the front of the line, we give you a new car. Yeah, what? They get the best apartments in town, housing first. The chronic homeless that have made the worst choices. They go to the front of the line. Oh, and by the way, if you went to traffic school like Joanne and I have to reduce our tickets, sorry, Joanne, I couldn't help that. But I showed up at traffic school and one of the guys in our young married class was there. And I said, how you doing? Yeah, well, I'm trying to reduce my insurance. But anyway, if you work toward recovery and you start making good choices, guess what happens? You now don't qualify for a new car. You can't get it. Now, it even gets worse than this. Because if you go out on the freeway with your car and drive 100 miles an hour and you get a bunch of other people to drive 100 miles an hour and you stop all the traffic and you set up a tent city, you now go to the front of the line. And those people that have been waiting for 2 years to get on the housing program, you bypass them and you get your housing. The system is rewarding the wrong behaviors. It's a broken system. And I have to tell you that my heart goes out because we live in a city that I love. And I have often said that homelessness has almost become lawlessness anymore. It's not homelessness, it's lawlessness. And it's impacting businesses in our city. But why am I so passionate and concerned about this? Here's why. When I talk to business owners, when I talk to people, do you remember what I said is the first thing that comes to their mind when they think of homelessness? Addiction, crime, needles, goes on. Our city's not safe to walk in. And I see people's hearts begin to harden toward those that need Jesus. And I began to see that people don't understand that the people we're helping want help. One thing I find interesting about Bible stories and the stories of Jesus, he always invited, he never forced himself. And what we provide is a place that invites people in that want help. And I hope people's hearts never grow hard because there's so many that still want hope and they still want help. And you never know when God's going to show up and that addict is going to say, I've had enough, I want help. And there needs to be a place for them to go. Last year, we had 2,700 of those individuals walk through our door. And because of many of you, you provided a place for them to come without any government subsidies, no government support. You provided a place where we could not only feed them physically, but we could feed the soul. Because it's when the heart and the soul change that the behavior changes. We had 237 that said, I want to enter into recovery. I understand I'm dealing with an addiction and I want to begin down that path and get the support and help that I need. And you're going to hear more about that tonight. And then this one I just love. Because we had a great president called Ronald Reagan that said, if you want to end homelessness, he said this simply, it's spelled J-O-B. I think today he would have added, it's not spelled government, it's spelled job. And so when you think about it, we had 336 people that got jobs last year. That is a hallelujah. That ends homelessness. And so tonight we're going to take a look at, you have this card with you, go through it. We're going to take a look at what that looks like in our ministry and how we are privileged to be a part of that. And so it's my privilege tonight to introduce Steve Ellingson and Joanne Zychek. They serve on our leadership team. Steve has been with us 2 years and 26 days. He serves as our development director, and I love his heart, his passion for this ministry, and he's been a great addition to our staff. Joanne's been with us 11 years and 16 days.
And 10 hours.
We're still in the 16th day. We got it. But director of the Coeur d'Alene facility, and she also oversees all of our women's ministries. And both of these individuals, I love their passion, their heart, their love for the Lord, and the leadership that they provide. So thank you. Let's give them a hand.
Thank you, Phil. It's a joy to serve with you. Over the last few years, during the gathering, we have been talking about homelessness and addiction and the underlying causes of those things. We've been talking about trauma, especially childhood trauma, and how that contributes to homelessness. It contributes to the choices that people make, the experience they have, their health, their life. We know this. There are not simple answers. We know this too. It is a complex issue. There is not an easy formula. We just flip a switch and things change. That doesn't happen. But I also know this. People can change. And we see that all the time here at UGM. And we're so grateful that we get to see that. But what is UGM's unique role in this effort across our city and across our nation? Let me give you a sports analogy that works for me in my life to help understand that. I have two boys who were very good football players in high school and college. One of them, my height, 6'3", but he's built like a brick. He was a lineman. He was a guard. And what does the guard do? When the ball is hiked, he's supposed to pull and go hit somebody and take that person, that defensive player, out of the way so the running back or the quarterback can take and advance the ball down the field. That's his job. That is what he is supposed to do. Now, my other son, he's 6'7". His arms are real long. He can jump out of the court. And his job, he lines up at the end of the line, and his job is to go 5 yards, 10 yards, 20 yards, maybe 30 yards, put the ball in the air, and he reaches up and grabs it. That's his job. Now, what's not supposed to happen is the wide receiver is not supposed to do the job of the guard, and vice versa. That would not help the overall effort. So in the same way, UGM, we have a very specific God-given call on our life, and it's this. We exist to offer a pathway out of homelessness for men, women, and children. And there's 4 words. You have it on your worksheet, but there's 4 words that we're going to focus on this evening, describing that, fleshing it out. What does it look like? And the first word is this: safety. We want to provide, and we do provide, when somebody walks in the door of one of our shelters, it's a safe place. They've come from unsafe places, but UGM is a safe place, and we work at that. The second word is a plan. So if a person comes in, they've discovered safety, we want to help them go from where they are and help them dream about where they want to go. And they need a plan to get there. So we want to come alongside them and provide a plan. The third word is time. So they're safe, they have a plan, but it doesn't happen overnight. It might take a couple months. It might take a year, a couple years, or longer. We want to give them that time free of charge because of you guys so that they can move towards health and recovery. And this last word is community. You know, most of them have left unhealthy communities, unhealthy relationships, burned bridges, and they don't know what healthy community is. But as they leave, as they move towards exiting, we want to help them develop healthy community so that they can continue their recovery for the rest of their life. Let me tell you one story about a young man. A couple months ago, a young man comes to the admin door at the Trent shelter. Now, oftentimes we have people that have not been there before. They'll come to the wrong door. I met him, and I looked at him, and I would guess he was about 20 years old. He looked really disheveled. Life had been really hard. But I said, let me help you walk around to the other side and enter the shelter door. Great. So for the next 2 minutes, we walked around the building, and I said, what's brought you to this point? And he said, well, I've been addicted to drugs and alcohol for a long time. This is a 20-year-old. He said, my dad is gone. My mom is in jail. I've made a mess of my life. I just got out of the hospital. I want to change. And can you help me change? And I said, yeah, if you're ready, we can help you change. And he walked in the door, checked in the day, and we see that all the time.
Steve, I was just going to say, I've heard that story over and over again. Just imagine with me for a moment, the sun is going down, and it's getting awful cold, and you're hungry. Yet you really don't know where you're going to go tonight. That's not going to keep you in that vicious cycle. You want to call mom. You want to call dad. But they are done. They're done rescuing you. You want to call your friend, but you've been from couch to couch for weeks and even months. You've burnt every bridge. You're out of options. If I go to his house tonight, there's going to be abuse. There's going to be addiction. I'm going to have to sell myself to get my needs met. I am tired. I know that if I continue the way I'm going, I will die. I am tired. I'm done. I just want to be safe tonight. Is there a place that will do that for me?
I want to ask you a question. When Joanne was talking and describing that, did you feel it? I felt it. Here's my question for you. We're talking about other people right now, but what if that was you? What if that was you? You've burned the bridges. You're addicted. What if it was your kid? Maybe you've experienced that. A nephew, a niece, an uncle, an aunt, a parent. Can you feel that? Here's our question that we want to ponder for just a few seconds. Take a minute and answer this question on your sheet of paper. Just maybe jot down a couple words. What would it take, if that's you, for you to feel safe tonight? Just take your pen, write down a few words. We're going to give you 10 to 15 seconds to do that.
I was in the drug world. My boyfriend at the time was a dealer, and up until I was pregnant, I was using. I just knew I couldn't bring a baby home there.
I struggled long enough with alcoholism. Went to a couple of different treatment programs where I spent my money. I knew I needed to make some changes, and I had begun to cry out to God, I don't care what you do.
I could get released and be dealing drugs by that evening, and it was just a continual cycle of crime and incarceration and crime and incarceration. And I was having a hard time of it, and I called the woman that was supposed to be helping me, and I was just bawling, like I'm just a criminal trying not to be. And it doesn't take long to go from like maybe getting in trouble a few times to having a record where it's an issue. And I was way past it's an issue.
I started drinking really heavily and just became a full-blown alcoholic. I knew I needed help, but I just didn't know how. And so for the next 13 years, I drank heavily until I guess I hit rock bottom.
Epilepsy got bad for me in my early to mid-30s. It makes it very difficult. It makes it difficult to maintain employment. It makes it difficult to want to be alone, because you never know when you're going to have an episode.
If we can develop that trust, the barriers come down, the walls come down, and then I think they feel comfortable. Once they're comfortable, they kind of get into a routine. It takes them about 3 to 5 days. Once they check into the mission, if they never stayed here, to kind of get like, okay, this isn't so bad. But it's that first 3 days, if you can build a relationship to help them through those days, they tend to thrive.
If they have children or they've had some past bad experiences, knowing that our building's safe, just physical safety, knowing that someone can't just walk in off the street, knowing that our volunteers, they go through a thorough process of, making sure that they're safe to be here.
For most people coming in, they are in survival mode. And it's not just physical survival mode, so it doesn't even matter if they have a shelter over their head. Most of their life, maybe all of their life, they've been living in emotional survival mode. And that is, I can't trust other people, so I have to figure out how I'm going to get through life on my own.
Both the mom and the kids need to feel a sense of safety. They need that fight or flight response going on in life to be calmed. They need other people to surround them and be a part of their family to bring that sense of safety.
Oftentimes, whatever the person is addicted to has become their friend. Because they aren't trusting other people, that's the thing they go to feel normal for a little bit, or not feel lonely for a little bit, because it numbs all that pain. So when they choose to start being separate from that, all these feelings start coming, like anxiety or guilt or shame. So they give up the best thing they know to help take care of that. So it's like letting go of a best friend.
We get a lot of men that come here for the fact is we're a higher barrier to shelter. I mean, because they know that the alcohol and the drugs won't be tolerated in-house. But we do give grace. If somebody comes here, shows up, and they're going to test positive for something, we give them the 30 days to work through that. But it's that intentionality of building that relationship to see what's drove them to the point of using addiction or mental health. We want to come alongside of them. We're going to hold them accountable, but we're going to love them.
It gives you a sense of organization and of seriousness and of safety. This isn't some place that anybody can come to. I mean, anybody can, but this is their place, and these are their rules, and the UGM is a very safe place, and that's why, because it's not a low barrier shelter. It's a high barrier, and it has standards, and the standards are upheld, and you're expected to abide by those.
When I first walked in the UGM crisis shelter for women and children, it was home. The women here helped me feel okay. You know, it's very welcoming, very safe, like I was a person, not just another freeloader.
I experienced safety here my first day. I got here, and as I was getting out of the vehicle and my ride left, I had a seizure. I had a seizure outside in front. I fell back and I hit my head, and UGM got me to the hospital. I woke up in the hospital. That's when I felt safety.
They loved me anyway. They took care of me. They allowed me, I didn't have to worry about calling in for a boss and getting fired. I didn't have to worry about, I can't work, I don't have food for my kids. I don't have a place to go or shampoo or heat or air conditioning. It was like they just allowed me to get well.
We have a lot of resources, whether you need clothing rooms, food banks, legal help, job skill. I mean, there's a lot of resources.
They provide 3 meals for you, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They provide a roof over your head. They even provide clothing if you need it. So you can focus on getting other things together to get back there in society, to get back out to where you want to be.
I met my future mentor, which I didn't know that's who she was. She, I guess, made it so I was feeling safe to explore healing. There's a difference between safe environment and safe to be vulnerable.
It's just being really empathetic, listening without judgment, and then asking vulnerable questions or difficult questions. And so if the person takes a risk, they realize, wow, I'm not going to be judged. I'm not going to be written off. And then also they start to connect dots in their own mind and heart. Oh yeah, this has not been working for me.
We work diligently in creating a safe and a healing environment. I loved what Carrie said. She said, they made me feel safe so I could explore healing. And Kimberly's comment was, they saw me as a person, a real person. So many of the men and the women who walk through the doors are hyper-vigilant. They're in complete survival mode. And trust is at a minimum, if not zero. And so safety is imperative. It's our first step. And what that does is it allows individuals to have an opportunity to begin to trust, to take down the walls that they have built, and to let their guards down. To just give you an example, you think they come into the ministry to be safe, but we have to protect that. Think of the woman who walks through the doors and she's high as a kite. How does that trigger the other individuals? Or the woman or the guy sneaks in some alcohol and brings up into the dorm room. And I was even thinking about so many of our women have been from a place of abuse, that even going to bed, laying their head down on a pillow and starting to fall asleep, yet hearing a woman screaming next door, yelling obscenities to her child, how that can trigger an individual and not make it safe or a place where they feel that they can begin the healing journey. So that is just so important.
I want to invite you again to imagine if this is you or somebody close to you. So if you're a guy, you have chosen to leave the street and gone to the door on the east side of the men's shelter. You've grabbed the handle and you've had the courage to open it up and walk in. If you're a woman, maybe with kids, you're leaving abuse, you're walking to the crisis shelter and that door, and it looks daunting, but you know, I need to go through. Maybe you've done that. Imagine if you've done that. What have you found? We asked the question, what does safety look like? This is what safety looks like. Those people, they have a warm bed. Maybe for the first time in a long time. It's clean. They have 3 meals served on a plate at a table. And the food is good, and you've experienced it today. They've met some very kind people who care and love them and care about how they're doing and want to help. You are safe, and you feel safe for the first time in a long time. But here's the question, now what? If you walked out, where do you go? You go back to the place of addiction and trauma and dysfunction. You walk back to the same relationships, the same obstacles, the same triggers.
Carrie, in the video, said that she was a criminal trying not to be. The men and the women who want recovery, they don't want to be who they were, yet they don't have a framework for what life could look like. For many of them, they have been doing this for so long. Carrie said, I was a criminal for 20 years. And so they walk through the doors with shame, hatred of themselves, self-loathing, guilt. And they put these protective personalities on. They hide behind these facades, trying to be somebody that they're not. Their identity gets distorted, altered, nothing to what God had designed for them. I met a woman, she was a young girl in her 20s, Elizabeth, whoops. That was not her name. Oh my goodness. She had been living under the bridge in Spokane for a couple of years, found herself pregnant, came through our doors, and she was in a class that I was teaching, and one day she was talking about this very thing, and she said, I am not who I was, but I am not who I want to be. And I'm in this place, and I don't know who I am today. I am struggling. And I think that's a powerful way to describe it. So part of our recovery journey is to go back, take a look at the roots. What are the causes that brought you to this place of homelessness, abuse, addiction? And then we begin to build on that and to develop a safety plan, something that will keep them from falling back into survival mode, and a plan of recovery. In the next video, you're going to hear this from Carrie, and it's so poignant. She said, if I went back to where I was, I would go back to where I was. Mind, body, and soul. So here's our second question for you this evening, is what would keep you from falling back into destructive patterns if it was you? Just take a few seconds and think about that.
I knew that if I went back to where I was just going to go right back to where I was in that cycle. I had tried several times to break it and just couldn't. But I needed to know how to live. Like, how do I survive? How do I take care of myself? Because it's like a long period of time that was my lifestyle.
To serve the client, we have to identify what's holding them back. That's what opens the doors. If you can identify what has held them back or what has hurt them, whether it be in first childhood experience, life trauma, addiction, mental health, if you can identify it, then it's not an unknown. And once it's known, we can help them work on it.
They come to you and they want to know what's your goal. And they try to give you a good, decent time frame that you want to meet these goals in. Whether that be housing, more food resources, these things are laid out in a plan, and they give you a list of people to contact who can help you with your financial situation or your housing situation. As of now, I have a actual medical device on me. I got a button I push if I feel one coming on. And I didn't have those resources available to me before I came to the UGM.
I am in the Career Path Readiness Program. UGM has greatly made it possible for me to have my daughter with me along this journey, along reaching my goals. Being here, despite the fact I'm not living independently, I am an independent person here more than I was anywhere else. Boundaries is always a good class. That was probably a big problem I had before in the past, was setting those guidelines for this is my life, that's your life, you do what you want, I gotta do what I need. Search for Significance is always a good class. It's a class that helps you recover from, maybe, to say it lightly, insults or criticism throughout your life that has maybe made you think less of yourself. And it does help greatly. I've done that class probably 2 or 3 times.
We try to assess whether the pain that they're going through right now has become greater than the substance that they're giving into or their addiction. So they have to be at a place where they really know that they want to change, or they really know they really need to change. Because if they're not at that place, it's really hard to help someone create a plan to change if down deep they really don't want to change yet. If they are ready to change, if we sense that the pain of their addiction has become greater, then helping them start to get in touch with what are some of the consequences of the choices they've made that they're powerless over. So that could be, for some people it is a spouse that is left. For other people it's becoming homeless. So as they start to get in touch with that, then they also start to get in touch with that they really, really need help and that they can't do it by themselves.
So like I knew that that's where I was headed. I just didn't know like how much healing I had to get and how much of the Bible do you really have to know, and like all the things, you know. And really it's just whether you're teachable and you're willing to take that risk. And at that point in my life, I was very willing to be teachable and like, okay, just tell me what I have to do and point me in the right direction.
In phase 1, one of our main goals is to help the client realize I'm powerless over my addiction on my own or things that have been done to me. Then that opens them up to realize I actually need help from God and others. Another goal is helping them to immediately enter into the self-evaluation process. When they make a choice that they realize is unhealthy, they have an opportunity first to go through a set of questions on their own, and then they bring that questionnaire in front of the self-evaluation community, and they sit down, they read their questions, and they read the answers to their questions out loud in front of other people. This is what we do to make it safe in there.
To be in that environment where you are with these other people that have the same problems or variations of it, and to hear them say it, you know, to have them sit in that self-eval stool and tell you mistakes that they've made that you might have thought you were the only one that ever made them, that's a huge thing. You're not alone. That was very, very helpful for me.
In phase 2, if trust is built, a big one is looking at the negative consequences of my negative choices, because guilt and shame are 2 of the strongest emotions that drive people toward addiction. No matter how many good things we do, we still feel ashamed of the things that we've done wrong. If they get to a place where they're willing to take the risk to start to face those things and face how it makes them feel and how it's affected other people, because they believe that maybe God would accept me, then that becomes more of a reality for them if they share some of those things in front of another person who's not judgmental, or they share them directly with God in prayer. Also in phase 2 is starting to look for community outside of the UGM, and then also starting the Genesis process. In phase 3, it's starting to look for someone who would be a mentor to them. And so they start building relationship with that person. It becomes another person that they can be open and honest with. And then by the end of the program, they've had a lot of experiences with that person over time. Then once they get out of program, they have a good chance of staying open and honest and not just going back to chemicals and stuff. That's also when we really zoom in on helping them develop their individualized relapse prevention plan. They will start to identify what are the specific things that I go through usually before I get to a place where I start thinking about using and drinking again. And then also choosing who the people are going to be who are going to be on their support team, who they're going to say, okay, you can ask me these questions about my recovery. So that's phase 3. And then in phase 4, a big part of phase 4 is they start going back out into the outside world. Part of that is a practicum. They do 240 hours of work at a business here that cooperate with the UGM. It gives them an opportunity to go back into the work environment and run into the issues that they normally run into when they've been at work before, and oftentimes it's cost them their job. But the difference is they run into those same issues, then they can come back to the mission and through counseling can talk about, hey, this is what happened, this is what I started to feel. And then they have an opportunity to start addressing those things. So then it gives them more of a chance to succeed once they get out.
The Life Recovery Program for me was an opportunity to just reset, to look at my life from the time I was a little kid on, right, and to realize where my pursuits were. I was trying to find this peace and this joy and contentment through relationships, through family, through whatever, which are all good things, but I was putting them where God belonged. What this program helped me do was just time, free from alcohol. Yeah, 22, 23 months sober. Not one sip of alcohol, but it's not just that, it's that I don't think about it. I don't struggle with it, I'm not tempted by it. More than anything though, that's my point, is that time was a huge thing for me.
I did a lot of trauma therapy, and so I also, I had, meet with my counselor one-on-ones. I did a lot of work on self-worth and self-esteem, and Jana had me doing this ridiculous affirmations in the mirror. My name is Carrie. What I have to say is important, just as important as everybody else. And isn't that weird? Like everyone's like, oh, you can talk in front of anybody and stuff. But like, that's where I came from like having to tell myself in the mirror that what I have to say is just as important as everybody else.
The Genesis process comes in around phase 2. One of the definitions in Genesis of addiction is anything that we use to avoid unwanted thoughts, feelings, or memories. One of the focuses of Genesis is helping people get to the pain underlying their addiction and the false beliefs that their pain is created. What I mean is something that feels really, really true to them. There might be a part of them that knows it's not true, but it feels really true. One other thing I'll share about Genesis that's unique, this is really unique, and that is a tool in Genesis that's called the FASTER scale. It's a series of behaviors that are really common for people who are addicted to go through before they give in to whatever they're addicted to. If they can look through that list of behaviors that people tend to go through, and they can figure out for themselves through questions, wow, these are really common behaviors that I go through before I give in to my chemical. If they can figure out their pattern, then they can start working on some of those individual behaviors. Then that allows them in the process to start heading away from that point of temptation that feels like, when I get to this place, I always give in. They can address it a week or 2 weeks before they get to that point.
I looked forward to Genesis class. You start at the beginning, that's what Genesis is, and you just work through those steps and you find out where you are on a FASTER scale, like, am I anxious? Am I feeling, where am I at? And I like to always think I used to say, I'm not on that. You're like, you're always on that. In recovery, usually, but there are sometimes, you gotta look back and think, where am I at? and they taught TBRI.
I love TBRI, trust-based relational intervention. A big saying in TBRI is connect to correct. So it's saying this is not a punishment, discipline program, this is a nurture program. This doesn't just apply to kids, this applies to even our relationship with friends and peers in the program, our spouses eventually. It's a culture, not just a parenting curriculum.
That started to develop just a different relationship with us. And people, my family, were like, wow, you are a completely different mom. You're not screaming at your kids anymore. You're not yelling. Like, you're talking to them and they're listening to you.
We teach in Genesis and in recovery program that there are so many other emotions. There's deeper emotions and they're tied to experiences. And we want to help identify those emotions and how you process those emotions. With kids, we're teaching them emotional regulation. We are helping identify where kids are at and giving them tools for navigating what life brings them and the emotions of life.
I remember with the parenting, they would just work with me one-on-one, and I remember crying, and they just group me in a hug, like, it's okay to feel that way. And they would give mom time. But they also really pushed me to kind of sit in those hard times with Olivia that I refused to sit with him before. And I didn't realize how important it was, because UGM was teaching me it's okay for me to feel that way. It's also okay for my kids to feel that way too. It's amazing. I would say I am in love with my kids now. Like, just love them to death.
I really had to be okay to let go of who I was. And that's really hard. I mean, when you're a criminal for 20 some years, you know, and then all of a sudden, like, you want to follow all the rules and you're doing well and you're trying to get healthy. And then it's like, wait a second, like, who am I? You know, like what's really going on here? So, yeah.
That's really it. The sobriety, in other words, starts not with sobriety from a substance, but it starts with the sobriety of your heart and mind before God. And it all comes down to, am I content? Am I satisfied? Why am I looking for something else? And He tells me there's only one thing that will truly satisfy you. And when I am satisfied with that, then I'm emotionally sober, and I never have to worry about the sobriety from drunkenness ever again, because it's not an issue.
I want to just stop. Yes. I want to just stop and have us think about what Joel just said. 3 things. Did you hear him say UGM provided an opportunity for him to reset? He said that. The second thing he said is he's been clean and sober from alcohol for 23 months, which is amazing. But here's what he said, which was most important. He said, sobriety of the heart and mind, emotional sobriety, satisfied, content in the Lord. Therefore, he didn't have to worry about the other things. I saw Joel yesterday in the office, smile on his face, enjoying life. It's a real story. You know, every person, every situation, every background is different. And each person, they need a unique pathway for them to be able to step out of homelessness, to step away from the trauma, to step away from the addiction. And that is what UGM is seeking to do. There's really 2 pathways that an individual can take, and the first one is a shorter one. We have what's called the Employment Readiness Program. So if somebody says, you know, I really would love to get a job, we want to help them do that. And as Phil said, many jobs have been found for people. Or case management. If an individual has been in the mission for more than just a few days, they have a case manager that sits down and says, okay, let's begin to dream. Let's begin to think about the future. What do you need? Where do you want to be? How can we help you get there? The second pathway is a longer one. It's called the Life Recovery Program, and it's between 18 and 24 months. And it's free for these men and women and kids. It's an amazing program where they can step in, they choose to step in and engage this.
18 months is a long time. And oftentimes residents will be hesitant to come into program thinking it is. And so when they start their journey, they begin phase 1 and phase 2, where there's really a lot of internal hard heart work. But they get into phase 3 and all of a sudden they're panicking. They want to slow down. They're like, this is hurrying too quickly. And it's at that point that they are looking outward. They're beginning their journey of finding individuals like mentors and sponsors who will walk the recovery journey with them. This is usually when they do a lot of future tripping. There's anxiety, there's fear. Because one thing to understand is the connections, especially family connections, and consequences and circumstances that have led them there don't miraculously go away. And so oftentimes they're still dealing with the fallout of everything they have lost. And so it's one thing to stay sober in community with other people who are doing recovery alongside you. But there comes this point that they leave, and now they're going into the workforce. They are going into an apartment or a home, and they're alone. They're having to make some decisions by themselves. And so that can be very frightening. And they're surrounded by people who maybe don't have the same tools or recovery experience. And so our last question for you this evening is, what would you need to stay on the path of recovery? What would you need to stay on the path of recovery?
I think someone can get the information they need really quickly. I mean, someone can read a book if they need to, but the opportunity to actually have a community to begin to open up and start healing, that opportunity is part of what UGM provides. Then they get healing while they're here. And they also begin to experience it enough that they can start looking for that on the outside and practicing it themselves, because they're starting to realize, not know, but realize, yeah, I'm starting to change because I'm opening up to other people. It is a really valuable piece of UGM, and that's one of the reasons why we realize that healing comes through community and acceptance and new experiences, not just information.
They do pretty well when they're in program because there is so much support. The biggest thing I found when people get out on their own, even people who think, oh, I'm going to be fine, I'm not going to need all that support, they find that they really do need that extra support and connection.
One of the biggest things they need is they do need a community outside of the UGM where they feel like they belong and they can be open and honest.
When they do move out and they're on their own, they've got a team of people that's already established that's going to be there for them. They don't just have their counselor or just have their mentor. They might have, the average team is probably 5 or 6 people, and that's a team that they're going to meet with at least once prior to moving out, and then our goal is to meet at least 3 more times prior to commencement so that they have a good, solid group around them and they're not alone. So that's a big part of Phase 4 is getting that team put together.
They start making plans on what am I going to put into my schedule so that I don't feel all alone. So it might look like on Wednesdays I go to a recovery meeting. On Saturdays I meet with my friend Joe who's in recovery. So they intentionally start making plans as if they're outside of the mission. And they start following through with that. And then if they do that, if they choose to do that, then they have a lot better chance once Phase 4 is over. And then they're no longer in classes, they're no longer in the direct community here, but they need to start really practicing what they've decided to put into place if they're going to live a different life than they lived.
In addition to our large twice-a-year gatherings we have and the weekly aftercare support group that we also have a whole group of volunteers. We have financial counseling, we have legal advice, we have one-on-one independent counseling. So there's a lot of opportunities for ladies to not just have connection, but to have the ongoing support that they need. The other thing we do is really work on where they're going to be moving and where they're going to be living. We do have the option of our aftercare aftercare housing, which is just right next to us in our facility, and all 3 centers have aftercare housing. So they have their own place, they're working, they're independent, their children can live there with them, but they still have connection and accountability to the center and to support.
I have breakfast of coffee waiting for me. I didn't always have that when I woke up in the morning. And I have blankets when I go to bed. I have a TV. I have a lot of things I never had before, and I don't take it for granted. I have a car.
That's cool.
I haven't owned a car in like 5 years. I have a GED. They didn't stop there. I said, I want to go to school. I want a better education. So they helped me and sat with me while I filled out application, and now I'm a student at NIC. I'm thankful for the fact that I said, I don't even like to work. I don't like to. I'm like, I've never had a job that I like. I hate working. And so Marcia, she reached out to the director where I was getting my GED and said, is there anything Sunny can do there? And they were like, yeah, actually. So I went to work at NIC. I did like a practicum there. I still work there, and I love my job. So I go to class, and then when I'm done, I walk over and I go to work. And it's the best job I've ever had. And I wouldn't have that if I wasn't here. I never would have known that something like that was possible for me to do. Like, I was cleaning toilets, which, isn't the worst, but that's all I thought that I could do for the rest of my life. And I didn't know it was possible. I could be working in the adult education, helping other people get their GED, actually.
I'm at home with my wife. We are doing very well. She's thrilled for me to be home. I'm very thankful for that. And I'm going to some Celebrate Recovery meetings and I'm working a lot, doing projects around the home. I'm digging life, the way God meant for me to dig life, yeah.
The miracles happen here, right? But everybody says that. The miracles happen here because they do. I would say that in the community we're helping things heal, like not putting a Band-Aid on it, which is hard. A lot of people that need the help aren't really ready for the help, but holding them accountable to certain things, that's helping because you get real change then, real change.
I spent the time in prayer and hungering, saying, God, I'm here and you're helping me. I want this help. I don't want to be here passing time. I want to be here learning and growing and making real change in my heart. And that's what happens, is that over time, as the time passes, you begin to have little aha moments.
My excitement would be getting back out there and not feeling terrified. To learn that if you focus, you can obtain it. With the right path and the right team and the right mind frame, which the UGM helps you gain access to the right mind frame. You can focus, you can get it. You can go get it.
With coming here, it's long term, and they actually gave me the tools. So now when I'm having a bad day, I don't need a drink. I can replay certain things in my head, and I have certain tools now that I don't feel like, oh, I need a cigarette, oh, I need a smoke, or oh, I'm gonna go out and party and just relieve. Like, I can live through those moments without having a breakdown. I'm not the same person as I was 2 years ago. Like, I have to remember where I came from, but I don't recognize who that person is.
Mine, and I know many other lives, would not have the hope and the outlook, the good outlook that they have because of this place. This is more than just a safe haven for many of us. It's home. It's the way out of things that most people don't even want into.
What you've heard tonight may give you a picture of what it would be like if it was you, your brother, your mother, your child. How does someone find a pathway out of addiction, homelessness, and abuse? You heard tonight that you need safety, you need a solid plan, you need time to heal, and a healthy community. Most importantly, you need life transformation, heart transformation, and we truly believe that can only be done by God.
I just want to take a minute and refer you back to what Kimberly said just a second ago on the video. She said this: UGM is the way out of the things that most people don't want into. Let me say that again. UGM is the way out of the things that most people don't want into. That's what we're about. A pathway out of homelessness, trauma, and addiction. There is a role for you. There's a role for me, and that's the community piece. That's where you and we can band together to help bring hope and help to these people on their journey of recovery. And so we want to invite you to be a part of the community. Will you consider being a part of that with us? And we're going to invite our executive director, Phil, back up, and he's going to talk about where UGM is headed into the future. Phil, come on up.
Thank you, Steve and Joanne. So as I look to the future and I think about what we've heard today, I'm reminded of this, how blessed I was to be raised in the family I was and with the parents that I had. Not everyone has had that privilege. But one thing that's true that we've learned about recovery that's fascinating to me is that there's a statistic that says someone who spends 5 years in active recovery, 85% of those people will go on to be successful for life. And isn't that what we want? In fact, I'm going to take a minute here. I just learned tonight during dinner time that Joe, you just got your coin for 5 years. Congratulations. Yeah. So when I think about our program, if you were following and tracking it, the phases to it, you'll notice that it's not 5 years. And for us, understanding that journey, we maybe were not blessed. They weren't, many of them, with parents that gave them years and years of a foundation. We want to continue to build on that 18-month program, and we've learned that housing is really critical to that. The support in the community, ongoing housing, and you saw the housing that we have in Coeur d'Alene. I gave the illustration, and this breaks my heart, that for the person that's making all the wrong choices, the government's saying, there's a house. We just build it. It's a brand new apartment, move in. Wouldn't it be great if we as a community said to those that have done the hard work, who have done the work at recovery and want to change the next generation as well as themselves, we said, we have an apartment for you. We have a place to support you. And that's, as I look to the future, that's our vision, to provide that for the people that we have invested so much in. And so we hope to continue to develop our aftercare and our supportive housing. And then the other thing that we're looking to the future to do is Richard Copeland was on our board here in Spokane, and he moved to Lewiston, Clarkston, the LC Valley. And it was his passion and heart. He said, what I saw happen in Spokane, there's nothing here in Lewiston and Clarkston for people. And so they started what they called the Rock Ministry, where they simply fed the homeless. And they bought 2 parcels of land, but they just never could turn the corner and make it happen. And so their board came to us several years ago, it's been about 4 years ago, and said, what would it look like if the mission came down here and started a shelter in the LC Valley? And I remember Lachelle, who was on the board, looked at me and said, to whom much is given, much is required. And it broke my heart to think all that we've learned and all that the community has helped us do. Why wouldn't we reach out to a community of 65,000 people where there's nothing available and open a shelter? So God has continued to open the door. The city council has given us approval, and we are in the process of finishing up the plans. We have the location, the site where we had a store for several months, and we will be transforming that. We are in the process of raising the support to see that happen in the valley. So if that's something you're interested in, there's a table out there and some individuals that would love to share with you and talk to you and tell you more of how we can continue that vision. So as I look to the future, I believe that God's called us to do what we're doing now, to provide a safe place where people can be loved, where hope can be offered, and lives are transformed. So on your little program that you got tonight here, you'll notice at the bottom, There's a QR code. Now, if you're like me, you don't know much about these things, but I understand if I pull out my phone and point it at it, it will tell me a lot of things that I didn't know, and my phone will begin to do it for me. Now, some of you are of my generation, which is the younger generation, and you will be better if you just simply go to the website. And for some even younger than me, you may be saying, well, what's a website? Well, out back, we would love to talk to you at our table. So feel free, but there's opportunities. And maybe tonight as you've come, you're saying, how could I volunteer? How could I be a part of helping others in this journey that we're on in life? And I want to invite you to participate. And I want to close by saying this. I am just so grateful for the years that I've been here to see how this community has responded and has a heart of passion and love for those that are less fortunate, and how we've been able to, because of the generosity of so many of you, do what we do. We wouldn't do it without you. It's a partnership. And we don't turn to the government and say, send it our way, because we believe in feeding not only the physical food, but the spiritual, the soul, because it's out of the heart that real change takes place. You know, I sit here and I look at these, and I remember when Joel came into the mission as an alcoholic for years and years, destroyed his marriage, destroyed his family, and now see God bring that all back together, to see a man that can sit there with joy on his face and say, I have a different life today. And to just see him blossom and God change his life, it's what it's all about. And I just want to thank you for those of you here that are our financial partners, that you've made an investment to change lives. And I can assure you that yours is an investment because it is producing results. So thank you for your heart, your support. And again, thank you for coming tonight. Have a great evening. I think we might be able to experience summer coming our way. Now, this afternoon when I dismissed everyone just sat there. They didn't know what to do. So I decided tonight I will close in prayer, and then you'll know you can leave. Because you're in a church, and I don't know if that's why people just don't leave when I say thank you for coming. But let's pray. Jesus, we are here tonight because of you and what you've done in my life and literally so many other people. And I thank you that you are the answer for the world and the situation that we find ourselves in. Thank you that you have called us to be salt and light. And thank you that you're still in the business of doing miracles in hard hearts, in people that have lost their way with no hope. Thank you that you're restoring that daily. And thank you that we have a message of hope to share with the world today. Thank you for the people here today that make this ministry possible, because they've given of their time, their talent, or their resources. To you be the glory. Amen. Amen. Have a great evening.